The air smelled of something rotting. Not the good rot of fallen leaves returning to earth, or the rich decay of a riverbank after the flood season. This was different, deeper, older, the kind of sourness that clings to places where something has gone wrong in the soul of things. It drifted through the valleys and market towns of the ancient world like smoke that wouldn't lift. And if you had walked those roads in the days before the great water came, you would have felt it, a heaviness in the chest, a wrongness you couldn't quite name. The earth was full of people by then. Cities hummed and clattered. Fields stretched to every horizon. Children were born, grew tall, took wives and husbands, built their houses and their fires. Life, by every outward measure, was abundant. But something beneath the surface had curdled. Violence moved through the land like a current. People had turned, slowly, generation by generation, away from the one who made them. They had forgotten the voice that once walked in the garden in the cool of the day. Or perhaps they had not forgotten it. Perhaps they had simply decided they preferred the silence. And in the middle of all of it, this vast, beautiful, broken world, there was a man named Noah. He was not a young man. He was not a prophet with lightning in his eyes or thunder in his voice. He was a father, a husband, a man who woke in the morning and worked with his hands and came home smelling of sawdust and soil. He was, the ancient text says, a righteous man, blameless in his generation. He walked with God, which raises the most haunting question of the whole story. What does it cost to walk with God when no one around you does? The word came to him not in a dream of fire or the crack of splitting sky. It came the way the deepest things often come, quietly, intimately, like a voice speaking into the hollow of the chest. God looked at the earth, and he grieved. That word, grieved, should stop us. The God who spun galaxies into motion and breathed life into dust looked at what humanity had become and felt something that the scripture does not flinch from calling pain. His heart was filled with it. The violence, the corruption, the endless turning away. It had reached a kind of fullness that could not simply continue. And so he spoke to Noah. Build an ark, he said, 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, 30 cubits high, 3 decks, a door in the side, a window near the roof. Use gopher wood and seal every seam with pitch, inside and out. Because I am going to bring floodwaters over the earth, and everything on it will perish. But with you, I will establish my covenant. Noah listened. And then he did something almost unimaginable. He believed. Stop and feel the weight of that for a moment. There was no storm on the horizon, not a cloud in the sky. The rivers ran at their ordinary levels. The sun rose and set exactly as it always had. And here was this man, this aging father with calloused hands and grandchildren underfoot, being asked to build a ship the size of a city block in the middle of dry land, because rain was coming. Not just rain, a flood that would cover the mountains. A flood that had never happened before. His neighbors would have watched. They would have laughed, first quietly, then openly. What are you building, old man? What exactly is it you think you know? The mockery would have had edges to it. Days turned to weeks. Weeks turned to months. Months into years. His sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, worked alongside him, their shoulders aching, their hands blistered and dark with pitch. Noah's wife moved through those years carrying something no scripture verse names, but every human heart can feel. The weight of being the family that everyone else thinks has lost their mind. And still, the sky stayed clear. How many mornings did Noah wake before dawn and feel the old doubt creeping in? The whisper that said, perhaps you misheard. Perhaps this is foolishness? How many evenings did he watch the sun go down in a blaze of amber and rose? Perfectly ordinary. Perfectly unchanged, and wonder how much longer. He kept building, because that is what faith looked like that day, not lightning and certainty, but a hammer rising and falling, in the long silence between the promise and its fulfillment. And then the day came. Noah was 600 years old. The text is remarkably specific about this, when the fountains of the great deep burst open and the windows of heaven poured out. It began in a way no one had ever seen before, because no one had ever seen it at all. The ground itself split. Water forced up through the stone and soil of the ancient earth. And the sky, that clear, ordinary sky, opened like a wound, and the rain came down not in curtains but in walls. 7 days before, God had told Noah, come into the ark. Not go, come. As if God himself were already inside. waiting, holding the door. Noah had walked every animal in, 2 by 2, or 7 pairs of the clean animals, just as the Lord commanded. Can you picture it? The low grumbling of the great beasts, the flicker of birds' wings in the half-dark, the smell of warm animal breath and fresh-cut wood, and the sharp sweetness of pitch. His wife and his sons and their wives, all of them stepping over the threshold of the one safe place left on earth. And then God shut the door. Not Noah. God shut it. And the rain began. 40 days, 40 nights. The water rose and rose until it covered the hills, and then until the hills themselves were gone beneath it. Everything the ancient world had known, the cities, the fields, the roads worn smooth by 10,000 feet, all of it was swallowed. The silence that descended must have been absolute. Only the sound of water, only the creaking of the great wooden vessel, only the breathing of every creature on earth, all of it compressed into one floating room. And then the water began to go down. A raven was released. Then a dove. The dove returned the first time, nothing in its beak. The second time, a freshly plucked olive leaf. The third time, the dove did not return at all. It had found somewhere to land. Somewhere green was growing again. When Noah finally stepped out onto dry ground, the mountains of Ararat beneath his feet, the sky above him washed to a blue so clear it almost hurt to look at. The first thing he did was build an altar. He knelt in the new earth, and he offered everything he had left to the God who had kept every word he promised. And God made a covenant. A rainbow, light bent through water, the memory of the flood turned into color, arched across the fresh sky. Never again, God said. Never again. There is something in this story that speaks to every human life that has ever waited for a promise in the dark. Noah did not have evidence. He had only a word, and he chose to build his whole life around it. He swung a hammer in the face of ridicule. He sealed the seams of an impossible boat in an impossible season. He kept going when the sky gave him no encouragement and the world around him offered only scorn. The flood story is not really a story about water. It is a story about what happens when one person decides that the voice of God is more trustworthy than the silence of circumstances. It asks us, quietly, persistently, what we would build if we truly believed the promise we had been given. What would we stake our lives on? What door would we walk through? And underneath the rainbow, the answer rises slow and sure, like water finding level, that the God who grieves is also the God who saves, and that has always been, and always will be, enough.